Hello there, I'm Barry Landau. I'm here today at Rainforest Flora Incorporated, one of my favorite nurseries in the world. We're going to spend some time with Paul Isley talking about different kinds of tillandsias. Hello, Paul.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rainforest Flora once again. And I'm really excited about today's talk because we're very proud of this retail nursery we've built here in Torrance, California. I can't wait to show you all the really cool stuff that we have in all different parts of this front area of the greenhouse. So to start with, you can see we have all these beautiful bromeliads here. These are varieses and guzmanias. We have lots of the gardens. We have the plants potted, and this forms the entrance to the greenhouse. Overhead, we have lots of tillandsias hanging. We have rare ones and more common species, but you can see they all grow just in the air like that. And so this is the front entrance, and so now we'll move as if you came in and you started walking and did a tour of the nursery. That's what we're going to do here today. This is our retail counter where people come to ask questions, to pay for their plants. And we'll often have some special tillandsias up here that we want to feature. This is a species called crocata. It has a wonderfully fragrant yellow flower that's very special. And you can imagine when this, after 3 or 4 years, grows into a large ball, the amount of fragrance that this bloom would put out, this clump would put out. And over here, this is where we have some of the plants for sale, the retail plants. You can see that they have the names and a picture and a description and the prices on them. And a lot of these in the front are hybrids that we've developed over the years. So we like these a lot. This is a little tiny species called Funkiana. This comes from Venezuela. We've been growing these for a few years. And Funkiana grows on a stem, and it can get to be 3 or 4 inches long before it flowers and offsets. When this one blooms, it has a bright orange flower. The leaves turn orange, and it's just spectacularly colorful. And in a little bit, I'm going to show you a clump in the back hanging over the pond that's about yay tall. It's been growing for over 40 years, starting from just one plant like this.
Taking at it.
Here we have another type of bromeliad. These are called mini neos. The miniature neoregelias never grow large. These are full-size plants. So if you have a smaller area you'd like to put them, if you like plants that send out long runners before they grow new plants, so they grow like satellites like this, the mini neos do that. This is a piece of cedar. It's a stump that we got over 30 years ago, and it's upside down on its head, so the trunk would be going down like this, and this is the root crown, and it doubles as a fountain. We have the plants growing all over it. They love it there. They multiply, and it's a very nice addition to the front part of the retail area. And here we have also neoregelias and some mini neos. This is Neo Yang that grows very large. You can see it's a large growing neo. And we also have some rock features with the tillandsias growing right on the rocks like this. These are clumps of the yellow flowering crocata that we had up on the counter. You can see they've started to multiply and turn into nice clumps. We also have some beautiful cycads. You'll see these around the nursery. And this is one called Inopinus. And above it another rockscape. And you can see up here on the rock a small tillandsia. This is a volunteer. We did not plant this. As time goes by, the seeds the plants get pollinated by hummingbirds, and the seed pods develop. Eventually they open, the seeds blow around on the ambient air currents, and sometimes they catch on things, and then the plant just starts growing on its own, just as they do in nature. There are quite a few of these around the inside of the retail area, and it's very nice. So now we'll move on down to the next part. And here, just past the fountain, we have another section of the plants that are for sale. And of course, all of the tillandsias get beautiful blooms, but they don't always flower. But this hybrid of Tillandsia albertiana that gets a bright red flower, very few tillandsias get red flowers. Albertiana is a very nice little plant. It's crossed with Tillandsia ziphioides. It gets a very large white fragrant flower. So the hybrid of those two produces a flower that has a lot of purple color in it. Not a lot of fragrance. Unfortunately, fragrance does not transfer most of the time. I wish it did. But it's a great little plant. You can see how long the stem is on this one. It's been growing for many years. So again, these are plants that we have for sale. And then over here, in this section, we have our plants that have fragrant flowers. All of these species produce fragrant flowers. And this is a beautiful cycad, Zamia lindeni. It grows very fast, it's rare. You can see how we decorate the trees. This is a palm tree called a Rhapis palm, Rhapis humilis. And you can see the tillandsia here with the flowers on it. This clump of Malamonte is starting to bloom. It'll get covered with beautiful blue flowers. Overhead, how's this for a clump of Tillandsia dorati? As you can see, it's coming into bloom. It has not started to flower yet. Dorati gets very large, blue and white flowers that are very fragrant. It has the most fragrant flowers of any Tillandsia. It can bloom for several months. And as you can see, it has a rather unique shape to it. And it's the hardiest Tillandsia. This will take colder and hotter temperatures and dry out less quickly than virtually any other species. Tillandsia dorati. And these are smaller seedlings that we have. These small seedlings, they're still 8 years old. It takes time to grow them. But these will also grow into large specimens like the ones we were just looking at. Their leaves, as the leaves die back, they curl into tight little ringlets around whatever they're growing on. So in nature, you'll get 2 or 3 leaves that'll be hanging around a tree branch like this, wrapped around the branch, and the plant will grow like that. And as it grows along the stem, it will send out new leaves, and then over time, as they die back and they curl up into these tight little ringlets, they'll be around other twigs or branches in the tree, and that's how the plant grows up through the tree. Very, very interesting. So many. This is Tillandsia ziphioides. This is the one that gets the big fragrant white flower that I just showed you before, the hybrid. And this is another hybrid with Tillandsia ziphioides. And this can serve as an example to show you the hybrid vigor that hybrids get with Tillandsias. The hybrid normally gets much larger than either parent, and it has a much larger inflorescence than either parent. This is one of the reasons we love the hybrids so much. They're just incredible plants, and of course they share the shapes of the 2 parents. So if you were to get 2 species with very different shapes, like dorati and ziphioides, and try to imagine what the hybrid would look like. You know, it's a lot of fun to hybridize with Tillandsias. Anyway, we have quite a few here. I could spend the whole day just talking about these. Tillandsia straminia is one of the absolute best of all the Tillandsias. It produces a very large purple inflorescence with white and lilac flowers that are very fragrant. It normally blooms only every couple of years. The good thing about that is that therefore it gets to grow for that extra year, so that after a few generations you can get individual plants that would dwarf this one. You can have plants with a trunk this big around and this tall and this round. And then they grow into clumps. I mean, it's just an incredible plant. Again, the name of this one is Tillandsia straminia. When I give people tours of our nursery, this is one of the places I like to stop, because this clump here is an emblem of how Tillandsias grow. It's a perfect example of how they grow. We glued one plant on here when we built the nursery some 10 or 11 years ago. That plant has now multiplied into this vegetative clump. It's called Tillandsia heteromorpha. And up close you can see how it's rooted to the rock. And that's what Tillandsias do if they get good conditions. If you glue them on or attach them in some way, and they get the humidity and the light and all of that, and they grow, they will root onto whatever they're growing on. Now also here, you can see other Tillandsias, like this clump here. And if I reach around, you can see these little volunteers that are just starting to grow. And behind here up on top, these little seedlings are only 2 or 3 months old. They're just starting to grow and to root onto the rocks. But again, the seeds they blow around on the ambient air and then they attach to things and they start growing. This one is called Tillandsia stricta hardleaf. You can see how beautiful the inflorescence is on that one. And it's just coming into bloom naturally. This is a clump of Tillandsia ionantha. And people say, oh, I want to get this one because of the red color. Well, Tillandsia ionantha is usually green, but when it blooms, it turns bright red. But sometimes, just in bright light and humidity, they can get a lot of red color anyway. So this is red just growing. This one on top is a little more red. It may be getting ready to bloom. When they come into bloom, they get an even more intense and bright red than when they're like this.
And Paul, you have a number of different varieties of ionantha, but what I'm curious about is, even these seedlings are volunteers. You grow a high percentage of your plants for sale from seed, unlike many nurseries.
Yes, that's the main form that we use to reproduce the plants. You know, the industry for these plants is based on plants that come out of the natural environment. And we stopped doing that. The last time we brought plants in was 1993. So we've got 18 years under our belts of self-producing plants that take 6 to 25 years for us to grow. Not an easy thing to do, but it is the way that we do it. And if you look over on the side over here, you can see racks that have Tillandsias growing on them. And those are all seedlings that we're producing. And since we started doing this in the early 1980s, we now have a pretty good supply of plants that we've grown ourselves. Well, this is a sample, for instance, of a plant called Tillandsia xerographica. It's a beautiful plant. It's small still, but it's probably 10 years old. Eventually, it can get to be almost 2 feet across with many, many leaves.
And I understand, Paul, that currently, because of removal from the habitat, Tillandsia xerographica is endangered or extinct.
It's the Dutch just sent a commission to Guatemala, and the report stated that the plants are virtually extinct in nature. They're 1 or 2 per square kilometer, which is not a self-sustaining amount of plants. The nurseries there have hillsides covered with these, and they are trying to reproduce them artificially from offsets or from seeds. The problem is that the statistics of how many plants are in cultivation compared to the plants that are being sold around the world, there's no way that those plants are being all artificially propagated. At the same time, there aren't really very many more they can collect from nature, so they're going to have to reproduce them artificially. Ours are all completely grown from seed. We got these originally in the early 1980s, and we've been growing them ever since. And it's the nice thing about the seedlings is that they have more leaves and more roots than plants that you break off as offsets. The Xerographica is a great plant. Most all the plants you see here we've grown from seeds. So now we're going to go up to one of the major features in the nursery. Let's go for a walk. All right, this is the main water feature that we have here at Rainforest Flora in Torrance, California. And we built this big rockscape waterfall area specifically to show people the kinds of things they can do with the plants and to show people how they grow vertically in nature, whether it's on a rock or a cactus or a tree. It doesn't really make any difference. It's the light and the water the plants get that they can absorb through their leaves that make the difference. In front here you see this giant clump of Tillandsia funkiana that I showed you the little plant earlier, and that clump is over 40 years old. We haven't had it for 40 years. We've only had it for 4 or 5 years, but it started from one plant some 40 plus years ago. And around on the rockscapes you can see the different Tillandsias and other plants growing on the rocks. Up above in the pots we have a huge Eichmea called Blanchettiana. And with time they get bright color, they get very large red inflorescences, and they make a terrific landscaping plant here in Southern California. As Eric pans around, Barry handed me a beautiful Tillandsia Xerographica.
So Paul, that would be like 25 years old or something?
Probably at least, yes. And it doesn't mean that people can't grow them faster. It just means that that's how long it takes us to grow them. But what a wonderful creation this one is. I mean, it's just an incredible plant. And the inflorescence, it blooms for almost a year. It's very tall, oranges and yellows and greens, and the flowers are purple.
And this one will have a couple pups that reproduce itself within a year or two.
This will have 2 or 3 offsets that will grow for the next 2 or 3 years before they bloom, and the plants keep going. And Tillandsia Xerographica, one of the magnificent Tillandsias, sitting next to Alcantaria imperialis. This used to be called the Varesia, one of the larger, more magnificent bromeliads. And when we get outside in front of the greenhouse, I'll show you one that's blooming right now. The plant is nowhere near as large as this one, but you'll see what the inflorescence will look like when it blooms. So now we'll move on just a few feet. And here, among some very rare cycads, is a beautiful display of Tillandsia tectorum, the white fuzzy one, Tillandsia ionantha, the red one, and other Tillandsias that give a very good way of how people can decorate with these wonderful plants. Again, the great feature of Tillandsias is that they can be used without any soil to decorate your vertical spaces. So here you see, for instance, we have a piece of grapewood, and we have the Tillandsia clumps. Now, these were started a few years ago from just one plant each, and now they've grown and they've turned into these nice clumps. And the Spanish moss just is an added feature. It just kind of hangs and grows, and over time it naturalizes, it blows around, and it just spreads, just like it does in nature. This is a beautiful purple leaf philodendron that grows up over the rocks, and it roots onto the rocks. You can see the many roots from the past. As it gets larger and starts to take over, we chop it back, take cuttings, we grow them out, and then people can get those. This is one of the nicer display areas of the nursery. And now we're ready to move on again. Okay, here we are at the back end of the retail area. This is where we grow our staghorn ferns. We have the largest selection of different cultivars and species available in the United States. Over 30 different kinds. And as you can see, the staghorns put out vegetative offsets as they grow over time and grow new plants. This cultivar is named after Mulford Foster, the great horticulturalist from Florida. And you can see how many offsets have started on this one. This is really special. And then way up high you can see the Platycerium superbums. Staghorn ferns are in the genus Platycerium. And the ones up above, the Platycerium superbums, are native to Australia. They grow high up in eucalyptus trees in their forests. And that one does not offset. You have to grow that one from spores. The regular staghorn ferns, when you have the brown spore patches on the bottom of the fertile fronds, that's normal. This is one of the two ways they reproduce. By putting out the offsets that I talked about a few minutes ago, and by producing the spores like this. So these reproduce both ways, but the superbums, the ones up above, only reproduce by the spores. So they're more expensive and more rare because it's not such an easy thing to do. We also have some cycads back here. And for our nursery, the mother of all cycads is this Cycas rumphii that we have right here. We've had this over 30 years, and it's just the trunk is 6 feet tall, about 2 meters. It's in the genus Cycas. It has naked seeds. Most of the cycads have cones, but the Cycas all have naked seeds. This is a female. Cycads and ferns were on Earth before flowers were invented. They're very ancient forms of plant life. Color didn't really come in on the Earth until flowers were invented, and the flowers came in to turn colors to attract animal pollinators. So before that, it was a very green world, and the staghorn ferns are all green, and the cycads are all green. Although interestingly, some of the cones on the cycads are brilliantly colored. And just gorgeous in their own right. So we'll move on to the next area. We've got a great waterfall to show you. Yeah. This is a giant koi pond. This is the back side of the waterfall. We have a giant street called Hawthorne Boulevard that comes along the side of the nursery. We are now on the Hawthorne side of the nursery, so between the sounds of the trucks and the cars and the ambient sounds of the waterfalls, there's quite a bit of background noise. So please just bear with us. But you can see how the rocks hold the tillandsias, and they just grow and multiply over time. And then we have this giant gold leaf philodendron that was small when we put it here a few years ago. But it's really growing and taking a life of its own now. This bilbergia called Hallelujah. Look how beautiful the leaves are here. It makes a fantastic patio plant, easy to grow, multiplies quickly. So now we're ready to go to the other side. There's another beautiful double plant of Tillandsia stricta hardleaf. And you can see how in nature these plants are rather nondescript in their natural environment many times, but when they bloom, the animal pollinators, usually hummingbirds, can see them from literally hundreds of yards away. All right, everybody, well, this is Hawthorne Boulevard. It's a major four-lane Caltrain street, 4 lanes in each direction. So there's a lot of noise, but it's easy to find us because we're right on this main boulevard here. This is another rockscape, and you can see how tillandsias very easily can grow upside down. And this Hoya has crawled across the rocks. It's gotten into the leaves of the plant itself, and it's using the leaves to support it while it continues to grow. And here we have another and the last aspect of our waterfall. You can see the koi down here love to eat, just like animals everywhere. So they're here saying hello. And if I had a handful of fish food, I'd throw it to them and they'd just chomp it down. But above you can see the beautiful rockscape with the tillandsias growing, the bromeliads growing. The giant white rock in the middle is a piece of quartz. It has a light inside of it, and when we're here at night, we turn the lights on and that light illuminates the inside of the quartz, and all these beautiful pastel colors show through the quartz rock. It's fabulous. And also hanging in the middle here, we have a giant clump of Tillandsia intermedia. It's the same one that we just looked at, hanging upside down on the rock with the Hoya growing through it. And as you can see, this one offsets out of the inflorescence besides offsetting at the base. So we'll get a beautiful rose-colored inflorescence pollinated by hummingbirds, and then it'll offset out the inflorescence over time. It grows taller and taller, but in the opposite direction. Instead of growing up, it grows down. This was grown by my friend Mark Dimmitt in Arizona. Spectacular clump. And now we'll move on again. Tenuifolia Bonsall Beauty, Tenuifolia Amethyst, Emerald Forest, Vaginata, Green Goddess, many forms of Tenuifolia. Also with Stricta. We have Stricta Hardleaf, Stricta Gray Leaf, regular Stricta, some hybrids. This one I named after my partner. It's called Tillandsia JR, Jerry Robinson. Tillandsia Bergerie is one of the more common species. Very inexpensive, beautiful bloom when it blooms. Offsets all year round. This Tillandsia Bergerie will grow into a clump faster than any other species. In fact, it serves as an anecdotal story. A number of years ago, a number of years ago, a gentleman came to the nursery who was 85 years old. He had a black plastic trash bag with 7 large balls of Tillandsia Bergerie. He had started those plants, those clumps, from one plant 40 years before. And since he was 85, he was passing them on to us. And those clumps are all here at the nursery. If I see one, I'll point it out to you.
Paul, I see you have a lot of large clumps above your head. Staghorns, Tillandsias. How long have you been at this location currently?
We've been here for 11 years, Barry. Before that, we were in Gardena for 21 years. Before that, we were in Mar Vista for a couple of years. And before that, we were in Palms for a couple of years. And before that, I was in Venice when I started the nursery 37 years ago.
And I understand it's not easy to get a property for a nursery in Los Angeles. You've essentially worked a miracle.
Well, and I have to give a lot of thanks to Southern California Edison. Yes, of course, land here is very expensive. And some 50 years ago, Southern California Edison got the idea to lease a lot of their properties to nurseries. They got the benefit of not having to take out the weeds. They had a tenant to watch the properties and maintain things. And in return, the nurseries got inexpensive rent so that they could grow and develop. And much of the horticultural industry, the landscaping and everything you see horticulture in Southern California is due to Southern California Edison. I mean, they deserve a lot of credit.
Back to our tour, I see you have a specimen-sized Encephalitis ferox behind you. Tell us about why you love cycads.
Cycads are one of the oldest plants on Earth. They're pre-flowers, I explained before. They have male plants and female plants that produce male cones and female cones. The female cones are wind pollinated. And they just have these incredible shapes. There aren't very many of them left on Earth. The most desirable ones a lot of times are in South Africa. They're all on Appendix 1 of CITES, which means it's very, very difficult to trade them, even if they're seed grown. But they're just stunningly beautiful plants that are easily recognizable. The most common one, the only really common one, is called a sago palm. The sago palm is not a palm, it's a cycad. It's called Cycas revoluta. It's native to Japan, and it freezes where it comes from in nature. So it's a very, very hardy species. And you know, folks, I got to apologize a little bit for the noise, but again, we're on Hawthorne Boulevard. What can I say? I can't stop the traffic. I wish I could.
And in a minute, we'll go out front and you'll show us some of the cycads you produce for sale.
Yeah, so we'll go out and look at some of the cycads, and we'll pass up this Encephalaris ferox in just a minute. And I also, on the other side, I showed you a clump of Tillandsia malamonte that I said was starting to bloom. Well, here's a clump that's in full bloom. And you can imagine this hanging in your patio or on a tree or, you know, your entryway or something like that, and the clump just gets bigger from year to year. And yes, you can separate them. You just pull them apart and you can make new ones. It's very easy to do. It's a thin growing form. The flowers, besides being beautiful, are fragrant. So this one would be pollinated by moths and butterflies. So we're getting toward the end of August, and this is the time of year when malamonte blooms, hardly stricta blooms. And that leads into another question, folks. People are always asking, when do these bloom? Obviously the blooms are beautiful. People want to see them when they're flowering. Most of them bloom during the winter because that's when the seeds set. They come into bloom, they get pollinated by hummingbirds, the seeds set, the seed pods eventually open up, the seeds blow around, and they catch on things, and this all has to happen before the onset of the rainy season in spring. So most of them bloom then. But it isn't to say that they can't bloom all year round, and it isn't to say that some species don't have a particular blooming season. So once you have a collection of 10 to 20 Tillandsias, you're virtually guaranteed of always having something with a bloom spike on it.
And I see some incredible stuff further down the way here.
We're on our way to the next station, folks. Let's go. I'm assuming you got the ferox okay?
Well,
this is Encephalaris ferox. It's an African species and coming out with a new set of leaves. The leaves grow very quickly. They grow from start in just a couple of weeks. And when they're growing like this, they're very soft and handle them. When they mature, many of them have these razor sharp spines on them, and they're real gotcha plants. I mean, if you get into one of these, they'll get you every time. This one produces a very, very large, beautiful, symmetrical, bright orange cone, and this one happens to be a female. The female tend to have round cones. The male plants with the pollen tend to have more long and cylindrical cones, and that's as far as I need to go with that. How's this for a Tillandsia? I'm not even sure what this one is. It's a hybrid, it's very large. I just found it sitting on one of the rocks, so I thought I'd pull it out to show to you. You know, one of the neat things about having the shop here like this is, especially now that we've been here for 11 years, there's so much in the way of plants that are just growing that we don't see every day. You can't see everything in one pass through. So when you walk through time after time, you run into plants that you didn't notice before, that you didn't see before, this being a perfect example. Probably will have bright purple flowers, very large, and will probably bloom for 3 or 4 months at least. All right, we'll keep moving. All right, the area that we're in now features some really beautiful large blooming variegas, another genus in the family. Nice thing about variegas, they don't have any spines on the leaves. The leaves are soft. They're perfect in patios or shaded areas or in the house. They do not do well in full sun. That soft green leaf gets burned easily in sunlight. But look how beautiful these inflorescences are, and look at the yellow flowers that are just starting to come out. And then behind these variegas, you can see there's another Alcantaria imperialis, and beautiful Tillandsias that are growing on the rocks. They've been there for a few years now. There's a clump of Gemina flora that's in my book, and you can see it there with a couple of seed pods on it. and another clump of Tillandsia malamonte behind on the edge over there.
And Paul, how old would you say that Alcantaria is?
How what?
How old is that Alcantaria?
Oh, from seed, probably 7 or 8 years.
And what about these rhezias? How long take you to grow those?
Well, again, these are offset produced plants, and these offsets mature from 0 to 1 of these in a year. They grow very fast. We have a lot of the smaller Tillandsias growing on the rocks here. We found that there are some that love to grow on rocks. And Tillandsia izoetus is one of them. That's this one right here. Tillandsia tricholepis is another one. But also I wanted to show you a number of the volunteers on this rock. This is like rock central for volunteers. A bunch of the Tillandsia seeds are here. This clump right here is a volunteer clump. This clump of Straminia, nobody planted it. It's growing on its own.
How old would you say that one is?
That's probably 6 years, 5 years, something like that. And then when you look over here, you can see a volunteer clump of Tillandsia growing on the wire. They just started on their own. And all around the rock here, all of these, and up the rock here, and over here, these are all volunteers. And so you come to here, and here are some seeds from a seed pod that opened. And you can see the fuzzy white cottony attachment that's on the seeds. And so in nature, these would blow around and they would catch on things and grow. But since we're here today in honor of the program, how about we'll just stick them on the rock here. They'll get watered, they'll germinate, and they'll start growing right on the rock.
Well, hi, Paul. We seem to have come around full circle, and we're back at that great cedar stump that you've turned into a waterfall. But I see you have some amazing blooming Varesias. What is that Varesia next to you?
Well, Barry, this is Varesia Filippo-Coburgi. In full bloom, you can see the great yellow flowers that it has. And a couple of really cool things about Varesia Filippo-Coburgi. One is, well, 3 things. It has a magnificent inflorescence, as you can see. Lots of color for a very long time. 2, you can see the black at the leaf sheaths here. I'm pushing against the Tillandsias up above. But you can see the lower leaf sheath has this black, and it's pretty much a feature of Varesia Filippo-Coburgi. And the third thing about it that's really nice is that it produces many, many offsets. So if you're the kind of person that loves to get cluck for your buck, return on your dollar, ROI, this is a good one because it produces many, many offsets, and pretty soon you'll have a yard full of them. And then behind the Filippo-Coburgi is a great stalk of cycad called Zamia lindeni. And right now it doesn't have any leaves on it, it's just producing a couple of cones. But behind it there's a seedling of Zamia lindeni, and you can see what the leaves look like. And this is normally about 3 meters tall when it has the leaves on it. We've had it for about 25 years. Awesome plant, and enjoy the heck out of it. You can see the trunk is getting to be about 4 feet tall now. Then next to that we have what we call the space needle. This is a cedar stump we've had for over 30 years. And we've got plants on it now that have been growing for a number of years. We have this clump of Cyanea here that started from one plant. And we have this clump of Tillandsia neglect over here that's in full bloom. That too started from just one plant a few years ago. And now you can see the beautiful blooms. You can see how hummingbirds would zero in on the color of those blooms and come in and pollinate. Then there's another clump of Cyanea above that, and a flavulata above that, and a winter circle above that. And down below we have a clump of Ionantha, a clump of Streptocarpa that's just starting to bloom. This looks like Ziphioides bistricta, which is a really nice hybrid. And then this is a Tillandsia streptophylla, a real beauty. And this is a picture that's in my book. I took a picture of this about 3 years ago and it was in bloom on the piece of wood here. Then we have a clump of Juncifolia. And then next to this, we have this great clump of Ceratizamia hildi. This is a real specimen. You won't hardly ever see them as nice or as large as this one is. And then we have clumps of Tillandsias. I love this one. Look at that. This is latifolia. It might be divaricata and it might be delgado. I'm not sure which one it is. But it's a really nice clump with 6 offsets that have come off from the mother plant and made a nice round circle. And you can see in the back the history of the plant growing on the stem. So this is many years old. And then up above, you know, it just takes so long to go through all of these, but we have so many Tillandsias, inexpensive to expensive, common to rare, singles to clumps, hundreds and hundreds of them that we've grown from seeds and offset over the years.
Well, that's excellent, Paul. I really enjoyed looking at the interior of your great nursery / botanical garden here. Why don't we take people out front, show them what you've got out front?
Well, let's do that. We can walk around and take a look and pan while we're walking through. This is our bench of bromeliads where we make gardens. These are very popular at holiday times, like Christmas. I can't think of anything that you could get that would have more color that would last as long for the price as something like this.
It's really true that bromeliads are very durable in terms of how long they stay in color for a given inflorescence.
Months and months, yes.
Paul, I see that you grow a whole variety of cryptanthus, which are the small bromeliads, often called earth stars.
Cryptanthus is one of the more unknown genera in the bromeliad family, but it's one of our favorites because the leaves have so much color, they're so easy to grow. And cryptanthus is from the Greek, and the crypt means hidden. You know what a crypt is, right? And then anthus is from, it means flower, so it means hidden flowers. The cryptanthus actually has white flowers that come up out of the center of the plant. They're not really hidden, but that's the name of the plant, the genus. Here's a piece of grapewood with a beautiful chocolate brown clumping of cryptanthus. And this is a smaller one with pink in it. Look at this. The shape of the plant, the earth stars, the color in the leaves, the variety, a lot like Tillandsias. The biggest difference is that these do need to have some soil. And they are not root intensive at all. When they produce offsets, most of the time they'll just fall off almost. So you can take them off very easily. And most of them are also very prolific. They produce a lot of offsets. And anyway, this is one of our favorites. They're called cryptanthus. Not very common. We have them here at the nursery, and we love to show them off.
And these work really good as houseplants as long as they get some good light.
Yes, they like bright light. They don't need to have direct sun or anything like that, but just bright light and getting water with good water once a week or so, and they just do great.
Well, those are fantastic.
All right.
We're out front here. I see that you've got some really beautiful alcantarias, Paul.
Yes, this is Alcantaria imperialis, which is one of the more spectacular of all the alcantarias. It produces a monstrous, incredible, maroon-colored inflorescence that comes up. It's huge. This giant thing comes up. Beautiful big branches, bright maroon color, and giant yellow and white flowers. In nature, this Alcantaria imperialis grows on cliffs outside of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And the cliffs can be very, very high, and you see these giant virizas and these incredible inflorescences growing up there. So we have larger specimens, and then we have smaller plants that people can buy and grow for a few years, and they grow up to be like this. It's monocarpic, which means that it does not produce offsets when it blooms. It's after it flowers, that's the end of the plant. However, as it grows, it produces small little offsets called adventitious offsets. The adventitious offsets can be taken off and rooted and grow into plants. They're just not full-size offsets like normal.
I see that you've got a very interesting virizia in your hand, Paul. I know you grow a lot of different kinds of vireas and ecmeas and neurigelias, but what is the virizia you're holding?
This is called Virizia simplex, Barry. And we like it a lot because of the bright colors on the inflorescence. And when an inflorescence hangs down like this, it's called pendulous. And it has the old flower on this one, the new flowers that's being produced on these two at the bottom have not yet sent out the stigma and the anthers, which are the parts that get the seed. So this is the stigma here. It's old. And then you have the anthers that have the pollen, and that's the male part of the plant. And the hummingbirds come and they get the pollen off the anthers, and they go and they visit a different flower, and the pollen gets transferred to the stigma. And so that's how it reproduces by seeds. But what a pretty plant this is, and not common, but a real nice plant.
I see you have one Alcantarilla odorata. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, how's this for a beauty? This is Alcantarilla, just like the Imperialis. A large growing Varesia with beautiful white leaves and a lot of conformation. Not very common, but a beautiful, beautiful Varesia.
And then below that, you've got some beautiful Nerogelia cruentas.
Neocruenta is a species. All the neos are from Brazil, just like all the cryptanthus are from Brazil. And with bright light, this one gets yellow, much more yellow instead of green, and the tips become a much brighter red. They're in the shade here outside the greenhouse, but where we have them in full sun, they get much brighter and vibrant.
And that's an excellent landscape plant, correct?
Wonderful landscape plant like all the other neos. This is Neo Flash that has a lot of red color in the leaves. This is a great plant.
Paul, I see you grow a lot of interesting different species of cycads.
Barry, we love cycads. As bromeliads are probably the newest plants on Earth, cycads are one of the oldest forms of plant life on Earth. They were here when the dinosaurs were here, and they are pre-flower. They were here before flowers had been invented, and so they have male plants and female plants with male cones and female cones. The female cones are wind pollinated, and they're prehistoric looking and very top of the food chain for horticultural collecting. Some of them have beautiful blue leaves, as you can see here with this Encephalartus princeps, and they have great fan shape to the leaves, like this Diune Holmgrenii. And this is a macrozamia from Australia. Lots of different kinds of cycads. There aren't that many left around the world, and they are the most collectible of all the plants in the world. They're expensive, but they're beautiful, and if you have a bunch of cycads, that's the top of the line.
What is this really tall one over in the back? Is that a Diune?
This one? Oh, the tall one in the back is a Diune spinulosum. It's a Mexican species, and again, they just get bigger and bigger over the years.
Very low maintenance plants, correct?
Yeah, just fertilize and water, and that's it.
Paul, this is an incredible facility, and I take it from what you've said, you moved in here around 11 years ago, but you've been in business 37 years. Where did the nursery start?
In my head. You asked. We had the original idea back in the early 70s. I had been introduced to Tillandsias when I was at UCLA. And I loved the plants. I didn't have any money. I wanted to try to see if I could make my own business work. So I went down through Mexico and Guatemala with a good friend and got some original plants. Started gluing them on pieces of wood and selling them at the Rose Bowl swap meet. And it just kind of evolved from there. I started out in my backyard in Venice, California. We had a competitor. As it turns out, he turned me into the building department. They came over. I was packing an order to go to Sacramento and caught red-handed. So that made me go out and get our first nursery, which was in Palms on Venice Boulevard. And so we moved there and set up shop. We were there for a year and a half. And then we outgrew that place and we moved to Mar Vista to a large 10,000 square foot greenhouse. We grew in that. And then that property got sold out from under us after another year and a half. And so we moved to Gardena. And we moved one of the great greenhouses on that property to Gardena. We rebuilt it. And we were in Gardena for 21 years when we got moved out of Gardena. Edison decided to sell the property, so then after that we ended up over here in Torrance, which turned out to be a wonderful thing because this is a fantastic facility, and again, like I said, it's close to LAX, but that's sort of been the progression over the years.
So necessity is the mother of invention. You've had to survive in a market where the real estate is at a premium, but it looks like you've done an amazing job. I want to thank you for all of this information, Paul, and we'll see you in future videos.
Well, thank you, Barry, and we'll see you next time around.
Hi, we're here today with PJ Isley, Paul Isley's son. He's the webmaster for the Rainforest Flora Incorporated website. What made you want to work on this website, PJ? Is it all the variety of plants, or?
Well, it's pretty interesting being able to work on the website like that and starting it. Learned a lot about the plants, managing each one and putting them up there and trying to build a really awesome database of all the pictures, all the different varieties of plants we have, and displaying them for people so they can all take advantage of them.
And I understand it wasn't an easy thing to do.
No, it wasn't. It's taken a few years, especially learning the way web is being developed and the trends and what people are interested in. It's taking a lot of work, but we're trying to deliver something that everyone will love.
And it's got that fully integrated shopping cart. And you've done a lot of work, and well, it's a marvelous website. I understand in the future you're going to have some of the videos of your dad and other kinds of interesting add-ons to the website.
Yeah, our next thing we want to add to the website is a section about the nursery here in Torrance, so everyone around the world can get an opportunity to see the beauty of it and the real uniqueness of it. And we'll have all the videos, YouTube, and everything on there.
And this wonderful website that you've helped create, what's the web address of that?
Web address is www.rainforestflora.com.
Thank you very much, PJ.
You're welcome. Thank you.